I recently did a video about a possible Sega Master System Mini. I added 42 games to this device, all of which I felt would be killer additions. I really did try and remain realistic in my approach. I felt Sega would avoid a ton of licensed content, so most anything they didn't outright own or have easy access to was left off the list. I also didn't feel Sega would load the device down with lots of repeats of the same genre. As much as I may think shoot-'em-ups deserve some attention, I think Sega would see their own stuff like Thunderblade, Space Harrier, and Afterburner as plenty of representation. Of course, many of you had your own choices that you'd add to the Sega Master System Mini, and you expressed how important they were to your experience with the platform. This has motivated me to make sure they get a voice, so on the off chance that Sega is listening, they have a shot. I went through hundreds of comments, pulled the most often requested additions to my list, and made a video just for you guys. In this episode, we will take a look at even more games that should be on the Sega Master System Mini. I have over 20 additions, so let's get started. (1987's Kung Fu Kid was a Sega-developed beat-em-up that was sort of an expanded take on the original Kung Fu Master. It's a sequel to the SG-1000 title Dragon Wang, and is a revenge tale in which you are after the people that killed your master. The visuals here are nice and colorful, it plays well enough, and I gotta agree with you guys, this would be an easy and great addition to a Sega Master System Mini. While I still would prefer Streets of Rage, Kung Fu Kid has an entirely different feel and pacing that sets it apart. It also has 7 stages and a decent challenge, so I would not begrudge this being there at all. Because I always associated Dragon Crystal with its Game Gear release, I didn't really consider it for the Sega Master System Mini. This is an adventure game where you explore stages, collect items, kill enemies, and do your best to stay alive. The gameplay is a combination of real-time and turn-based movement, and it does take some getting used to. At first, death finds you really easily, and you'll need to learn what does what to get the most out of it. The levels are maze-like with darkened out paths that you must uncover. Find the goal and move on to the next stage. Each new game randomly changes the layouts, so no 2 games are ever the same. Would this go well with the Master System Mini? Sega owns it, and I see no reason why it shouldn't be there. Aerial Assault is a horizontal shoot-'em-up that comes off as fairly simple at first, but it's actually pretty solid. There are some really nice effects here at times, it's challenging, and it's a pretty fun time. The only thing that really holds it back is the lack of stages. At only 5 levels, it doesn't have a load of variety. Sega does own this, however, so it'd be easy to include. For those curious, this is not the exact same thing as what showed up on the Game Gear, so it is a true Master System exclusive. I was actually kinda surprised so many of you wanted to see Enduro Racer included. While named after an awesome arcade game, the Master System port was nothing like that. This is an isometric racing game that isn't bad, but isn't what I'd call a must-have. I'd take Road Rash instead of this any day of the week. But I do admit, with Sega owning this, we are far more likely to see it on the Master System Mini. If Sega does include it, hopefully we get the much better Japanese release that has twice as many stages. One thing I considered when doing the first episode was that I didn't feel Sega would include multiple games of similar themes outside of titles like Sonic. So with me having the original Alex Kidd and Shinobi games, I just didn't think Sega would include Alex Kidd in Shinobi World. Many of you seemed really disappointed in this thinking, and you clearly felt it should be included. I fully admit that this is an excellent 8-bit release, and I would love to see it on the Master System Mini, should it ever exist. This had the best gameplay of the Alex Kidd titles to me, and the sound and visuals were outstanding. This is one I would gladly admit I was wrong if it happened. The Sega Master System received 3 games based on the Asterix IP, and honestly, they were staples of the library outside of North America. All 3 are worth playing, having very nice graphics, and even the weakest of the bunch is still better than a lot of other games released at the time. Many of you consider it a must, and I can't fault you for that. These are all solid picks, and Sega owns the games themselves. The only hiccup is that they do not own the actual Asterix license, so I'm not sure these have a real shot at being included. I think Sega would want to keep the licensing costs way down, and Asterix just doesn't have the worldwide draw to warrant the investment. I want them all, but just don't think Sega would pay for them. I can't say I was surprised to see the love for the Ninja. This Sega-developed run-and-gun is based on the arcade Ninja Princess. We get a new lead, new stage layouts, new enemies, and some new music. This is quite a different game in the end, but I must admit, overlooking this classic was a mistake. While I used to suck at it for a long time, recent years has seen me get quite good at it and see it in an entirely new light. This is an excellent title that Sega owns outright, and I must say, it really needs to be on the Master System Mini. It's an early release that stayed true to its roots and remains insanely fun all these years later. It even supports 2 players. There are many of you that have fond memories of Kenseiten. It's an action game where you must guide your samurai Hayato in his quest to recapture the stolen scrolls and Dragon King sword. Your enemies are many and include spiders, skeletons, warlocks, and a ton of other things that appear out of thin air. While I admit that I think this is a good game, I can't say it's something I have to have. Some stages have that one-hit reset and repeat mechanic that really hurts it for me. I just don't want to replay the same area to the point of tedium. I know some of you consider that kind of challenge appealing, but Kenseiten's gameplay isn't strong enough to command that type of respect from me. Sega owns it though, and it did have FM sound support, so including it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I was really fond of the Master System Double Dragon. It played differently from the arcade, and my friend and I dumped many hours into it to see the ending. Lots of comments wanted Double Dragon to be included, but I just don't think Sega would pursue the license, particularly since they have their own franchise in Streets of Rage. Still, this is certainly a classic version, and the 2-player mode set it apart back then. Great graphics and an awesome soundtrack that supports the FM module would make it an excellent addition. I don't think Sega would get it, but if they do, I'd certainly approve. Like Golden Axe Warrior, Golvelius is a Zelda-like adventure that has you exploring, finding items, and killing enemies. There are many hints scattered around its world to help you understand what you need to do and where you need to go. Collecting money lets you buy the things you need. My biggest issue with this were the respawning enemies. In the beginning it makes navigation tough, and I just never took to the exhaustive nature of the combat. To put it bluntly, I much preferred Golden Axe Warrior. I can't beat it up too much though. The gameplay variety is nice with both auto-scrolling areas and side-scrolling stages in addition to the Go Anywhere overworld. Contrary to popular belief, this did not originate on the Master System and first appeared on the MSX computer in Japan, where it even got a sequel. It was developed and published by Compile there, which means Sega would need to license this. Not sure that would happen, especially with their own RPG and adventure games sitting there for free. The Golvelius situation also applies to Miracle Warriors. Sega developed and published the Master System release, but it originated elsewhere and is owned by another company. This is one of those adventures that plays completely different from the other JRPGs of the era. You move your character around via a mini-map and interact with towns, NPCs, and enemies in a larger window. This one is tough to get into at first. Death comes easy and you need to learn where to go and how to deal with the nasty inhabitants of the land. It's a good game though, and can be a heck of a good time once you understand it. Again, I just don't think Sega will go after many games that need a license, but should it be there, I know a lot of folks will be very happy. A lot of you expressed your love for the Fantasy Zone titles on the Master System, particularly the first two. After some thought, you are probably right to assume that Sega would have them on this device. They were in-house developed and Opa Opa was Sega's Japanese mascot for many years. They also happen to be good games that are well identified with the Sega branding. They would also fill 2 slots for shoot 'em ups, which my list was sorely lacking. Many of you took issue with me including Deep Duck Trouble and not the Lucky Dime Caper. Honestly, they are both good games, but I much prefer Deep Duck Trouble. I think it's superior visually and it has a better variety in its stages. Lucky Dime was also a better release for the Game Gear in my opinion. There you did not lose your attack when you get hit, something that I always hated in the Master System version. Personal preference aside, I wouldn't be against its inclusion here at all. It's still a solid adventure with enough replay value that I think most folks would enjoy it. Of course, this one falls into the license debate again, so even if Sega went after a few of the great Disney releases, we are likely going to see some omissions no matter what. The Power Strike shoot 'em ups were really good on the Master System, and there were a number of comments wanting them to be included. Compile developed these, but only the first was released in North America. I fully admit these games were showpiece titles for the platform and would be killer additions. I didn't have them on my list because I really do believe Sega would not load the Master System Mini down with shooters, and they have plenty that they own themselves to represent the genre. But like a few of the other games in this episode, I'd gladly be wrong here. These games are expensive these days, so it would be an easy and effective solution to get more people to play them. There were a few people that brought up how incredible the Master System library was for gun and 3D games. Some even bemoaned the fact I didn't include any on my list. I will be straight with you here. While a Master System Mini would be a much appreciated release, I do not believe for a second that Sega would develop a modern gun to be compatible with the titles that need it. Doubly so when it comes to a modern 3D glasses solution for the games that use that. These mini consoles are built cheap and for maximum profit. Like the entire lineup of mini systems before it, the Master System Mini would be made using off-the-shelf parts and would be a simple emulation box that just happens to be officially licensed. Sega would not invest in peripherals that would add significant cost and risk to such a project. It's good to dream, but those Sega Light Phaser and 3D releases are well beyond a product of this type. I was absolutely shocked that some of you wanted Teddy Boy. It was originally a Sega card release for the Master System, based on an arcade game released in 1985. This is an extremely simple game where you blast enemies and collect stuff. Stage visuals are rudimentary, as is the music. I'm not sure if the love for this one is driven by nostalgia, or if I just don't appreciate it on the same level. Either way, Sega does own this, and it would be really easy to include it. Perhaps a Sega cards section would be in order, and include a number of those releases since they were so small in size. Astro Warrior was another surprise. This simple shoot 'em up only has a few stages and is about as plain Jane as it comes when talking about the genre. It was included with many of the consoles as a pack-in, typically bundled with another game. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad by any means, but I'm not sure Sega would include it with so many other options available. There are lots of you out there that really like the Master System version of Ghouls and Ghosts. While I adore the Genesis release, I never took to this one. It does have additional content beyond the original. Arthur can be outfitted with different items that help him in his quest, an addition that many of you consider a game changer. I just never could get behind its gameplay, however. This is noticeably slower and more clunky than either the arcade or the Genesis releases. I also thought it looked and sounded bad. I don't know, this would never be on my list of first choices, and if Sega wanted to license a Capcom game, I'd much rather have Forgotten Worlds. You know, I admit that I really hadn't considered Action Fighter. This is essentially Sega's version of Spy Hunter, a top-down combat game that has you controlling multiple different kinds of vehicles. Sega owns it and it'd be an easy addition, and there isn't much like it on the platform. I must say I wouldn't fuss about it being added, so bring it on. A number of you pointed out that there were other Illusion games on the Master System that you preferred. Besides Castle of Illusion, there was also Land of Illusion and Legend of Illusion, though the latter was only released in Brazil thanks to Tectoy. All of these games were top-notch, and the more you have of them, the better. While Castle will always hold a special place in my heart, both Land and Legend would be worthy substitutes. They all play great, have some of the best visuals on the platform, and hold up extremely well. Like the Donald Duck titles, I do not believe Sega would license them all, so we likely will get just one of them at best. I'm not picky about it, and would be happy with any of these fine choices. I saw multiple requests for sports games on the Master System Mini. I admit I'd like to see some as well, but going by the Genesis Mini, I didn't think Sega would include any. They certainly have a heck of a list if they did, however. The Great series of sports games included just about everything. There was great basketball, great football, great ice hockey, great golf, so on and so forth. They're not all particularly good, but they'd be easy to add since Sega owns every one of them. Alas, Sega didn't include any on the Genesis, a platform known for its sports offerings, so there is little chance to see them here. I omitted Cloudmaster just because of the licensing thing. This was originally a Taito arcade game, a horizontal shoot 'em up with a little dude riding a cloud. It's a decent game, but I just don't think Sega would pursue the IP and pay for it. Again, they have plenty of shooters under their own branding. It does have nice visuals, supports the FM sound unit, and is quite a solid challenge. I'd take it if it was offered, but I wouldn't hold my breath for it either. I really enjoyed Ghostbusters on the Master System. It plays so different from the other games on the platform, and even though it could be crazy hard, I still dumped many hours into it. If I had my way, I would include it in a heartbeat. You have to catch Ghost, buy equipment, and defeat the evil Gozer the Gozerian before New York and ultimately the entire world is destroyed. I love the tune that plays throughout the game, and trying to fight your way through that final run was all I could think about for months. Thing is, this game would be a miracle if it turned up on the Mini. The game itself is owned by Activision, while the IP is owned by Sony Pictures. That's a lot of hoops to jump through and a lot of money to be paid in order to score this game that is quite divisive in its quality. Ghostbusters wasn't on the Genesis Mini, so I don't expect one here either. Old Bomber Raid here reminds me very much of Capcom's 1940 series of shoot 'em ups. It's vertically scrolling and has very similar art style on its planes and ships. It's a fairly solid game with lots of challenge and colorful visuals. It supports the FM sound unit, and as far as I know, Sega owns it. That makes it one that would fit well with the Mini, particularly since it was Japan's very last Mark III release. I would expect to see this before any of the Power Strike titles. After reading the many comments from the original Master System Mini episode, it made me realize that there is no way everyone is going to be happy with the final selection of games. There is always going to be something included or left out that you disagree with. I think the very best we can hope for is that the list would include enough that you at least respect it and enjoy what is offered. I think Sega would win some pretty big brownie points if they just added some options to take advantage of modern technology. Sega could move the pause button to the controller. Sega could add original and FM sound support. Sega could hide some Easter eggs in the hardware, like Snail Maze or Hang On. Hell, I'd even appreciate some SG-1000 love. There is so much in Sega's history that could be easily touched upon in a product like this. I guess the bottom line is this: Sega could make this so much more than a simple emulation box. They could make it fun with unlockables, achievements, and features that really show off just how ahead of its time the Master System was. While many see it as nothing more than Nintendo's bitch during the 8-bit era, it was so much more than that. It had a library well worth playing and a number of classics that deserve some attention from modern audiences. Hopefully, if we keep pounding that message out, someone at Sega will eventually take notice. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.